We thought we'd take the episode in a little bit of a different direction. Over this last little while, this year has been coined as the year of the Great Resignation. There's been a lot of movement in business. A lot of people have been leaving their jobs in pursuit of different things, and Susan has a lot to share with that. So Susan, I wanted to introduce you, but as well ask you that question: how has the last year played out in the workplace? What has that done to business, and how is that going to look in the next couple of years?
Well, as you can imagine, I can talk about this for hours, so I'll try to keep it as much to the point as I can. But yeah, as we've all known these last few months, there has been a lot of sudden changes that lasted for a long, long time. Because I don't know where you guys, of course, are watching this, but for us in the UK, it was meant to be just 6 weeks that turned into almost a year and a half of just, hanging in there. Mm-hmm. And for the workforce, this meant, of course, a very sudden change, and just literally like from 1 week to the other to figure out how this new way of working had to be. And yeah, there was a lot of errors being made, a lot of mistakes being made. And now, as you know, we're all trying to find our way in this new way of working, and we've seen a lot more things that is possible from both the employer and the employee's perspective. It's been really interesting to see the opportunities that is brought with us. And not all employers are understanding this. And luckily there are like my clients, especially like in like fintech or digital agencies, marketing agencies, they really understand how to make this work for them. So as you mentioned, the Great Resignation wave of 2021, I really love that name. But what I think it shows is that employees are understanding and also seeing what was possible for them in the last year and a half, and having that ability to like work from home, being more flexible with your time, working around your schedule, for example, with your children, or if you have an elderly mother who needs help with like grocery shopping, once a week, for example. Just having that bit of flexibility, it can mean so much just for how you show up at work. Because that's one of the things I always say. It's so important to understand that people have a life beyond the desk. And once we understand that the person in front of you is not just a number, not just their employee number on their salary check once a month, you can really learn to utilize people's strength in regards to, of course, like productivity, the way they show up, the ideas they have, the way the work and everything flows. And I think people are now realizing that they actually have a choice. So that's why we're seeing that big shift happening in the market.
Interestingly, we talked earlier before we were on camera, and you had mentioned how there was a big difference. You're a Dutch lady that moved out of mainland Europe into the UK, and there was differences in how employers sort of treated flexibility from one country to the other, and that's within Europe. You can imagine within the differences between Europe and North America or even Asia. I think the change, as you're mentioning, employers requiring to be more flexible in working with people, and life is beyond the desk. That's going to actually affect some countries even more distinctly, because they're very hard and fast on the being at work and having a rigid sort of 60-week schedule or 60-hour-a-week schedule. So I would imagine your comments are going to probably dig a little deeper in some countries over others.
Yeah, definitely. And like I mentioned before, when we got started, I actually have a background in history. So this is what fascinates me most, right? On understanding how the difference has formed over the years, and how we behave in these situations. And just for example, the 5-day work week was introduced by Henry Ford in 1926. So almost for 100 years, we've been doing this concept of 9 to 5, 5 days a week. But it was based in a time where the assumption was that if you work 40 hours, someone else is taking care of the children, the cooking and the cleaning. Mm-hmm. Yet nowadays we expect it to be at at work for a certain amount of times, but we also still have our, I know, we want to go to the football once a week. We want to spend time with friends. So if it's allowed again, restaurants, well-being, all these other things that modern day life bring to us, yet we're still stuck in that 100-year-old concept. Mm-hmm. Well, so much has changed, and especially with mobile phones, of course, right? It's not just you're focused on work anymore from 9 to 5 and that's you're done. It's the lines, the boundaries are so much more blurry, which makes it on us physically, emotionally, mentally much harder to draw these boundaries, especially if you work for a big company. You've got different time zones. If you have your phone on and have a work app on that, and you still get like day and night work coming in, popping up, you'll never get a break.
Right.
But we're still set in that system from 100 years ago. Yet modern day life is so incredibly different than that, format that started back then. Because I noticed it with my husband as well. If we believe in equality, right? That's how we prefer to have our life. I have my business. He has his job, and then we've divided things we do with the children and like with household, that kind of stuff. But if he's away for work overnight a lot, it's virtually impossible for him to play catch up on the weekends. He's absolutely exhausted. Mm-hmm. So unless I basically provide a free childcare service and all that kind of management stuff for his employee, he can just not make that fit in the time he has available. And I told him as well a few weeks ago. I said, yeah, no wonder. If that was the assumption that you as a husband, of course, in the dynamic that we have as a husband, you were supposed to just do the work, and I, as the wife, was supposed to do everything else. Yeah, then if we decide to both have that big chunk of work, and then on top of it, it's not going to fit. Just if you think about it like that, and I think that's why with the past year, what happened that employees are starting to realize that we actually have a choice, and that if your current employer is saying, look, back to normal, back to the office, and no, you can sort it out because your kids are not my problem. And people are going to go to an employer that says, if you need to have a doctor's appointment and you're half hour later, of course.
Yeah, I think, as the old expression, once the toothpaste comes out of the tube, you can't get it back in. And now that we've been working for the last 18 months to 2 years in a much more flexible environment and still able to do our jobs and still able to manage all the things, but with a work lifestyle that's more conducive with your personal lifestyle, that's going to be hard to go back. So I think you're right. There's going to be a lot of shifting changes. Lots
ding. Exactly.
That flexibility. And so great. Thank you so much, Susan, for coming on the show today. And Susanne Grant, tell us how people can find you and tell us about your book.
Well, if you're interested in what I have to say more about this, LinkedIn is the best place to find me. Just make sure you spell my name correctly, because it's Susanne, it's the Dutch spelling, Susanne Grant. I've got a website, grantmethod.com, and I also have a best-selling book. This is specifically for aimed at female entrepreneurs, CEOs, managers, because I dive in this whole concept of the female versus male paradigm. But of course, if you're male, you want to read it, or you are non-gender, or however you define yourself, the principles are still the same. Just a chapter about motherhood and such is not going to resonate as much. But for this book, you can go to dropthestruggle.co.uk and you can get a Kindle edition via Amazon or a hard copy, and that ships to all over the world. So no matter where you are, you can get yourself a copy.
Super. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.